makes it that we don't have in every conference a session like this, now Q-Bible is going to start. That's great, so things can change. Or we don't learn it. It's not by chance. It has to do with values. Science culture has specific values. And these values are as following. The knowledge we seek in science is objective and rational, right? But the myth or the central story we tell ourselves is that the process of doing science is also purely objective and rational. Like hypothesis testing. But when there's a phenomenon of human beings, when you label something like objective and rational, the other side is labeled as non-science, or threatening to science. What do I mean? The subjective and emotional. So that's almost automatic. That's how human beings are. But you know, since you do science, that doing science is objective, rational, and subjective and emotional. It's all of these things. But we just don't talk about that aspect of it. We don't have language to talk about it. So I'd like to ask you to name, if you will, some aspects of doing science that fit in this side.
Second.
Don't hold back.
Intuition.
Intuition, yeah. Go on. I can write it to my back here.
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. So these are like the positive emotions that keep us going.
Rejection.
Rejection. Dealing with rejection.
Ownership. Discouragement.
And discouragement. I told you in my talk that I was facing burnout, right?
Frustration.
And frustration. So we'll talk about how that's like almost built into our profession.
Ego.
And ego, right? Ego is ourselves, others. What about like skills, real skills that belong to this side? You have to be on this side.
Patience.
Huh?
Patience.
You have to have patience.
Persistence.
Humiliation.
And thinking also of things like
Insecurity.
Thanks for mentioning all these things because they're so. I certainly felt the insecurities. I'll tell you more. It's so. Things like how to listen, how to choose a problem, how to mentor. So for example, I can tell you that my first graduate student, I chose a problem that seemed to me easy, but I forgot what it's like to be a beginning student. So I said, take this machine, 96-well fluorimeter, and program it to oscillate its temperature, and then measure how bacteria respond to different frequencies of oscillating temperatures. And I saw that his motivation kind of plummeted, and so I said, okay, streaks and bacteria, grow a color, like a growth curve. The simplest thing, a growth curve. And now do it again. Good. Say, what's the error? 10%. Good. So like, quickly get some positive encouragement. The person can feel that they're in control a little bit. So that was a big lesson for me. And so all these aspects. We talked a lot about rejection, humiliation, so that reminds me of the song. That's something that I face several times a year. Dear authors, we have now heard from 3 referees. Whose comments are attached below. As you will see, they have raised concerns about your interpretation of the facts, your choice of model systems, your references, and the style of your prose. Yeah. So referee number 1 says that the results are incorrect, even though the topic is mildly interesting. Referee number 2 says that the results are correct, but the subject is completely not interesting. Suggests 14 additional experiments, though tangential to your main point, would be nice to have. Oh yeah. As a result, we regret that we cannot offer publication at this time. Please know that we value your work and would like to hear more of it in the high standards of the archival journal of upper nasal cavity research. To mention that referee reports are something that one of the things that we do to ourselves. So the style of the, right? And also grant reviews, and also the way grants are written, like it's supposed to be hypothesis driven, and we get to know the answer in advance. But things that scientists do to ourselves. Why? Because we don't talk about how we want science to be like. Why don't we talk about how science we want to be like? Because it's taboo, and so we're so isolated. We can complain about it over beer, but we never get together to talk about it, so we have no chance of changing systems. And so we're quite powerless, and increasingly so. So, you see, science has a culture, and it's a very powerful culture. It affects all of us. The thing with culture is that culture can be changed. And that's something that's happened and many, many times in the past. It's happening today. It's been researched. It's not a secret how to do it. I just want to give an example. 100 years ago in America, women couldn't vote. Also in England, right, in Europe. And it was clear to many people that they shouldn't vote because this is the way people spoke, or you read in the newspaper. You know, women are domestic creatures. They can't decide about public things. Everybody agreed that's the way people spoke. Except for some people who didn't agree, right, and got together and faced a lot of adversity, but over several generations got the vote. Now, the way we speak is very important because now there are still people with chauvinistic opinions, but very few people would dare to say, "Women, take back the vote from women." Just because we don't speak that way anymore. The culture has changed. So you can't change people, but you can change their behavior. Culture affects people's behavior very much. So culture can be changed. And how can we change culture? It's exactly like in the same example. It's by making spaces for discussing the subjective and emotional aspects of doing science, like what we're doing right now. Like, I'd like to have a session at a conference about how to say no to, or how to, all the things, how to mentor, what to do with motivation, etc., to learn about it. So that we have the language to speak about what's going on, so that we can address the worst phenomena that we see in science, like some labs which sequentially destroy talent, which makes me very angry because we're dealing with the most talented part of society, the most creative, and so to have systematically destruction of talent is just unjust. But it's tolerated right now in our culture. It's fine. Right? You publish one good paper and 12 postdocs go with kind of need of healing afterwards because that's okay. That's a good lab, right? So that's not right. So because we don't even speak about what we want science to do. So, let's do another song. This is dedicated to Mike Surratt. Mike Surratt, when I was a postdoc, had a very important impact on me. He was a postdoc at the lab next door. He was the kind of person that every question I had, he had to answer. And when I wanted to quit, because my experiments weren't working, etc., he kind of contained, like, listened to me, made it all better. And so you can think maybe if there's someone like that for you. And of course he left afterwards with postdoc in science. People leave all the time. Traveling, you get to face. So this music is by Leonard Cohen. Mike takes you down to a place by the centrifuges. It's your first day in the lab, and you don't know what a centrifuge is. And he hands you precious flasks, and you drop them, and they shatter. And you look at him quite meekly, but he says it doesn't matter. They were only the controls. And he gives you of his buffers, and he gives you of his strains, and you wish you had his genome. came to him one morning, an idea had been forming. My transformants weren't transforming, my swarmers were not swarming. I said, Mike, I'm a failure. I'm going to work at Lord & Taylor. I think I'm quitting science, but he says, now don't be hasty. You see, science, like the cafeteria food, is sometimes nasty, sometimes tasty. And soothes you so discreetly, and you trust in him completely, and your mind, it has been freed, and you know that somewhere something will succeed. Now Mike is packing his papers in a folder. There's a knapsack on his shoulder. His pipette is in its holder, and as he leaves the floor, the shakers all stop shaking, the columns all run dry, and the autoclave stops baking. It'll never be the same. And you know that you must keep him, or at least that you must clone him. And you know that you will miss him, and you know that you will phone him all the time. Mike takes you down